Hey, what's up everyone? My name is Jeff, and today we're going to be diving into a deck that I put together for KALDHEIM Standard. Once KALDHEIM comes out, this is the deck that's probably going to be my go-to deck for actually ranking and doing some stuff. I tried to build this as competitive as possible, as well as just playing new cards, doing some fun stuff. And so this deck, we're going to be diving into tearing it apart, or not tearing it apart, building it up and seeing what awesome stuff is in this deck. We're going to unpack it a little bit and see what we can dive into with this one. So let's jump right into it. So jumping over here, first off with Aether Hub, I just wanted to give a quick 2-second this is how Aether Hub works, because I've had so many people not in my comment sections, whatever, just not know how the process of importing and exporting works with MTG Arena. I'm not going to dive too far into it. I know some people might need a little bit more, but basically the reason why I like Aether Hub is because all you have to do is jump to this export button right here. The link is down in the description below every time on my videos if I'm playing a deck. And you just go here, you click the export button, you say MTG Arena format. It copies all of this to your clipboard by clicking this button. So this is the list. You copy it, and then all of that goes into, all you have to do is just in MTG Arena, there's an import button. I closed my MTG Arena, so I didn't have the music in the background, things like that right now, but there's just an import button in the deck area. As long as this is copied to your clipboard, you haven't copied anything else with copy paste, anything like that, then it'll automatically import this deck list into Arena. It'll show you what cards you don't have. It'll show you all that kind of stuff. So that's pretty cool. Also, you can also check out MTG Assistant, which is right here as well. And on this, you can also check it out in the link down in the description below if you want to support my channel. But MTG Assistant also shows you which things you have in your library, which things like, so if you're checking out other people's decks, it'll actually base your MTG Arena library against what else is on here on Aether Hub. So I just really like Aether Hub. They've done a really good job. The creators of it have been pretty good friends of mine throughout the process of me doing YouTube in general. And so I like what they're doing here. They've done a really good job with everything. Anyway, so that is my plug. Let's go and dive into this deck. So Valki and TERGRID, or TIBALT and TERGRID. I can spoke right. There we go. So the main cards that we're playing with here is Valki, God of Lies, which is a really, really awesome card. The first side of it is a 2-mana god, 2/1. Valki, it's Loki, basically. We're here to known as Loki or TIBALT. Whenever Loki enters the battlefield, each opponent reveals their hand. For each opponent exile a card they reveal this way until he leaves the battlefield. So if they do remove it, they get the creature back to their hand. But you can also just pay X, choose a creature card exiled with Valki. So if you're playing this against a lot of opponents, then whenever it says, each opponent you get to exile, you can put a bunch of creatures under this. You can pay X, and any of the cards that are exiled underneath him, he can turn into those creatures. So Bone Crusher Giants, Questing Beasts, maybe a Vorinclex at some point, or maybe just a Lovestruck Beast that's big enough to be able to kind of turn it into that creature and get it off the board. One of the best creatures you can probably hit with this is any of the gods that are like from Theros Beyond Death. So if you find a Klothys from their hand, and then on the next turn you can turn this into a Klothys that becomes indestructible, keeps the Klothys away from their hand so they never get it back, and you also get Klothys ability. So there are some pretty cool things you can do with Valki. It's better than just a typical like discard card, especially because of the other side of it. But just talking about this side, this is a side of it I wasn't sure if I wanted to be playing initially. I was like, it's just going to it's going to die to things, and then they're going to get the creature back, and it's not going to be quite as good. It's going to be like, but at the same time, Kitesail Freebooter has basically been the opposite version of this, where it takes non-creature cards and still is played everywhere, because disruption is still very, very powerful. And if you can disrupt their curve off of creature decks, or take away their Bone Crusher Giant before they get up to the turn 2 or 2 mana, then also all of a sudden they don't have removal. You can turn this into a 4/3. If ever they do target again, they're at least taking 2 points of damage and taking a turn off to do so. So Valki, really, really good card in general, just that side of it. And then it has the Planeswalker side, which I know the text shows up a little bit small here. Let's see if we can actually get this a little bit bigger for you guys here. Not sure if that's too much help, but we're gonna try it out. All right. Yeah, unfortunately this is a pretty blurry card in general, just from what I'm seeing. Anyway, but 7 mana. So Valki, which is really cool. I've never seen a modal land yet, or modal card. I guess we're still kind of getting used to these modal cards in general, but this is the first modal card that is 2 mana on one side and then 7 on another. Like, it's such a big difference, but it is really cool where we have this like game finisher card that also has some good tempo play in the early game, or some control play or whatever. And this is a really powerful effect. So TIBALT, when it enters the battlefield, you get an emblem with, you may play cards exiled with TIBALT and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. So when it says the name TIBALT, Cosmic Imposter, I believe it's just the cards that are exiled with this card himself. I'm not sure if that just means any cards that have been exiled with Valkis or TIBALTs throughout the whole gameplay. I'm not totally sure the ruling on that one. We'll play and see how it goes. You know, it's coming out soon, which, by the way, if you guys are looking for content with KALDHEIM coming out soon, I will be playing these cards on the 27th. Thanks to Wizards for sponsoring me to be able to get into the pre-release event. So on the 27th, I will be doing live streams. I'll also be getting out potentially, I'm going to try to get out 2 videos, maybe 3 videos on Wednesday, just a few days away, of KALDHEIM stuff. And so this would, I'm not sure if I'll be playing these more competitive decks or if I'm going to be playing more like janky stuff and let you guys kind of go with this stuff that I'm going to be showing you guys now. Anyway, rest of TIBALT. +2, exile the top card of each player's library. So that just is a way to exile stuff. You also get 2 cards that you can play. So you exile one from your card, from your library, something from their library. TIBALT is, honestly, this is going to be an amazing commander card as well. Like, this is such a good commander just by himself. A 2 mana side of it that you can play over and over again if it gets really expensive, or you just kind of wait and try to make sure you can play the 7 mana version of it. If you ever get just tons of mana, you can play him multiple times. And then you can just -3 exile target artifact and creature. Hit the biggest thing on the battlefield, and then potentially you play that the turn after it comes out, and you do the -3, and suddenly you can play it. So an Elder Gargaroth, exiled, you get to play it, and the emblem is always there. Emblems cannot be interacted with. That's kind of the point of emblems. And so the fact that this emblems with that ability, you exile an Elder Gargaroth or a Questing Beast or Vorinclex, something big. They kill your TIBALT somehow, and then you still get to play that card on the next turn. So regardless, even if this is a top deck and you don't have any other cards in hand, it will create card advantage for you basically consistently, unless they have a way to like if you +2 and they're just both cards, both lands at the top, you can still play those lands, I believe, because you may play, I think it says that you may play cards that were exiled with it, and then you may cast the spells those color as any color to cast those spells. So you can play lands with this as well that are exiled off of either side of the libraries. So no matter what, this is card advantage. It's a really, really powerful card and awesome. And so that is probably the main win condition. -8, you can exile all cards from all graveyards, which is kind of like it's not that powerful of an effect. That's like a Tormod's Crypt type of effect, but it's really good when you have the emblem attached to it. Now you can play all those cards for the rest of the game. And then you also get to add 3 mana just to be able to cast those spells right away. So that is like our main win condition. We want TIBALT to be able to take advantage of this craziness, to be able to play a lot of the cards that we get with Valki. So that is win con number 1. Win con number 2, and basically our only other win condition besides like Bonecrusher Giants, and I'll dive into each of the cards, why they're there. I'm going to do a little bit more in-depth type of fill than I typically do in my deck videos, because I'm trying to give a little bit more information here for this. Let me know if you guys like this type of content as well, what kinds of things you do want with this. Sorry, I'm talking a lot about everything. I don't do this that often. I typically just play games. So I'm trying to make sure I create good content for everybody, whatever anyone wants here. Anyway, so TERGRID, God of Fright, 5 mana. Let's go ahead and zoom this in again. 5 mana. Whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent or discards a card, discards a permanent card, you may put that card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So there's a few different places where this kind of can come up. So it causes a trigger to appear. So whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-land permanent, so it has to go to the a non-token permanent, it has to go to the graveyard or discards a permanent from their hand. So if you it has to be a permanent card, it can't just be spells or anything like that, but still that's a lot of stuff. Embercleaves, Ugins, whatever. They hit the battlefield, then it'll come back to the battlefield right away, which is just a busted ability. Like this is so broken, and it's on a decent body too. It's Menace 4/5, and so TERGRID. I've heard a lot of people saying that there's not a deck that this really goes into, and I disagree. I think there's a really powerful decks that it can go into in Historic, and so we'll talk about that another time. But TERGRID does have this slot, I think, in this deck where its basic win condition, where we can have this ability. Basically, what we're trying to do with this, and I'll talk about all the pieces in the deck, but we want to get TERGRID out on turn 5 if we can. and keep it around. And then we have a lot of ways to discard cards from their hand. We do have ways to make sure they sacrifice stuff as well. There's not as many of that ability just available to us in good cards in standard right now. There's a couple cards that are like 6 mana, each player sacrifices 2 cards or anything like that. And that's just, it's not very good. Like, honestly, it's not that good of cards. So we're not playing those ones, but we're playing other ways that we can get really good stuff from their hand onto the battlefield, basically. And so Tergrid, that's one of our other main win conditions on this other side. Is there any way I can move this over a little bit more? No, okay, I'll just do this. All right, Tergrid's Lantern, 4 mana. You can tap, target player loses 3 life until they unless they sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card. So we do also have this flip side. We can play a 4 of this legendary creature, the same as Valki, because first off, it's our main win condition, so we want to be playing it anyway. But there's also a side of just like, if we have tons of mana, we know the kind of removal they have. We've seen a lot of creature removal or something like that. It might be better just to play the control game, have Tergrid's Lantern out, and just try to get in basically with like a Croxa like effect. Like, either you're going to take 3 life or you're going to sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card. If they sacrifice a token, it's not very good for us. If they're going really wide tokens, that's going to be one of the harder decks for this to really beat, or this card to really beat against that. But if they're going to be sacrificing lands every turn, this becomes land destruction. We can pay 4 to untap it, so we can have it happen multiple times. Maybe destroy 2 lands each turn, or discard 2 cards, and suddenly we get those onto our battlefield if we have a Tergrid. Or we just get to start pinging them down for damage with life total, and that becomes really, really powerful after time, especially with this deck where I think we're running like 27, 28 lands. So we do have ways to get up to where we're tapping this down, most likely two times a turn. If we're going to be playing this out anyway, it's probably because we're getting up to a place where we can be untapping it twice a turn, which means we have 3 triggers per turn, which that's a lot. Like, this is a Torment of Hellfire effect. That's what this is. A Torment of Hellfire, if you guys know the card from the past, did this effect, but you could cast it, or for X spells. There was a Torment of the Scarabs, I think, was the card as well, that basically did this on every upkeep. And it was a powerful enough effect that it did win games. There was a control deck that just played that and did okay. And Tergrid's Lantern on a god that's already crazy powerful as well, that works with this, so we don't ever run into 2 copies. We want both copies on the battlefield if we can, so it's just really powerful. I really like it, and so we'll see how good it is. And the other side of this too is they have to sacrifice non-land permanent. Sorry, I forgot, this side actually says non-land permanent, so they have to sacrifice for this one, which is even better for Tergrid. But lands do come to our side of the board if they do get discarded. So if they discard a land for any of our discard effects, or if they sacrifice if they sacrifice a Fable Passage just to get another land, we get a token copy of that Fable Passage that then we can sacrifice and go grab our own lands as well. So there's a lot of cool things that we can do with Tergrid, and honestly, I think those will just keep coming up more and more the more that we play with Tergrid. I'm really excited about it. All right, so that's our 2 main cards. I wanted to dive deep into those, kind of talk about the different things that can happen with it, why I think it's worth playing around this deck, and then we'll be diving into why we're playing in a bunch of different pieces. So first off, we're going to talk about our discard effects. So first off, Duress. Duress is not played too much in standard right now, even though there's tons of targets for it. Ugins, Embercleave. The biggest reason it's not played right now is because it doesn't hit Bonecrusher Giant, doesn't hit Brazen Borrower, doesn't hit Lovestruck Beast. All these cards that people are playing as creatures that also are spells. And unfortunately, that's a little bit harder to hit. But Duress also hits all of the modal lands that are being played right now. Most of those are spells or non-creature spells that we can then discard a land out of their opening hand pretty quickly. So Duress is really powerful, actually, still, even in the turn 1 play. You can Duress, hopefully hit one of their lands or disrupt them enough that they're going to be not be able to play quite as quickly. And then basically Duress becomes our turn 6. Like, typically Duress is not as good later game, or like you're maybe playing it to try to hit a counter spell so you can play something else out, which is really good, but it becomes extra powerful for us with Tergrid. On turn 6, we play out Tergrid, we Duress, we potentially hit their Ugin, their Embercleave, whatever. It hits the battlefield and we suddenly have or it goes to the graveyard, and that puts it onto our battlefield, which then we can do crazy cool things. We get to play their stuff, which is awesome. So Duress becomes really, really good, as well as just our other discard stuff. Acquisitions Expert. We don't have any other way to increase our party. I don't think there's any other stuff in this that has party things in it other than us stealing their cards. You know, like Valki can easily become something else that would make this we get to choose 2 cards, and then we can discard the best one that will work better with TERGRID. But for the most part, we're just trying to use this in the early game to make sure we disrupt their plays, disrupt their hands. Hopefully it hits good stuff with TERGRID in the late game. But we're not as focused about that. That's going to be something random anyway. We're basically trying to just play this control-y matchup, play a control-y deck, and kind of go from there. So those are the main pieces of discard. Valki also is discard. It's more disruption. We have like a decent amount of disruption: Duress, Acquisitions Expert, and Valki. There is a 2-mana elf that I almost brought in. There's like Burglar Rat that you can play, or basic thing like that. And I just didn't feel like it was worth having too many copies of this effect, because we can also just use the flip side of TERGRID. Like we can just use that flip side to have them discard cards, and we can also just play, you know, a more control-y, better removal and all that kind of stuff deck instead, you know. So that's basically what we're trying to do. We do have 1 copy of Liliana, Walker of the Dead, just to be able to have each player discard a card each turn. I was thinking about bringing Rankle in here as well, but I feel like just Liliana fit better for a control-y side of things. If we have played a lot of spells in the early game, then it can also just use its negative X ability, or -3, where target creature gets -X and X until end of turn, where X is the number of cards in your graveyard. So it's good removal. The emblem is really powerful. Whenever you get an emblem at the beginning of your combat turn, put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It gains haste. Anyway, it's basically another effect that does all the things we're trying to do. Oh, that was the wrong way. That was really big. All right. So Liliana, basically an extra copy of Valki for us. That's not quite as good. You know, that's basically where I picture Liliana right now, is that it's good, but not quite Valki, not quite TIBALT status, or sorry, Loki. My bad. I keep saying the wrong name. My bad. All right. So that's basic. That's our discard. Those are the things that work with our game plan here. But other than that, we're just straight up control. Cling to Dust to be able to play up against rogues. I'm not expecting rogues to be as prevalent at the beginning of the next set. A lot of people do dive into newer decks, and so we're not going to see as much rogues for probably the first 2 weeks. And then I think after that, you maybe slot in a second copy of Cling to Dust. But just starting out, I think that 1 copy is about right. There's enough other things to be hitting out of the graveyards. This is just a good card in general, gaining you life, drawing you cards. It's very versatile. Once you hit it one time, you can be using it lots of times. And so I can definitely see Cling to Dust being a 2 of, but right now I think 1 of is right, and having more removal for other big things is better, because there's lots of big things coming. All right. So Cling to Dust, awesome card, really, really good here. And I think the 1 of's nice. 3 copies of Bloodchief's Thirst, just for good removal. It hits stuff in the early game. If we're on the draw, we want to just be able to hit their ramp spells. We want to hit some, you know, Luminarch Aspirants. We want to hit their Valki so we can get stuff back. Whatever else is happening on the board. Bloodchief's Thirst is really good in the early game, and then it can just hit the big things like Ugins in the late game, which is just a really powerful card. I really definitely like it. I think 3 copies is necessary here. I've been debating if I want to go up to 4 copies of it, but I think that 3 is right. And then of course our Shadow School Smashing to make sure that we can keep hitting our land base. We'll talk about lands here in a little bit. Heartless Act, 2 copies of this, just because we need it. We need some extra good, just destroy any creature type of thing. There are going to be Vorinclex decks out there. There's a few other cards that give ability counters in this one as well, where there's like a couple more cards with flying counters, a couple more things with other stuff. So Heartless Act may not be as good as of removal in this format. I'm still not sure. We'll still have to see on that. That's why I'm only slotting 2 copies right now, where it's still good removal for sure. It's just nice to have. And so we're putting 2 copies of the Heartless Act, and basically 2 copies of Murderous Rider to kind of be a catch-all, where it just says destroy target creature or planeswalker. It's another body we can put on the battlefield that also just gains us life. So Murderous Rider, Heartless Act. If you were feeling like you need more Heartless Act, this is the slot where there's 4 copies of something that's good for removal. Whatever meta is shifted to, you switch that up to 4 copies of the thing that's best, or you know, or a mix of the things that are good. I like having a couple copies of Murderous Rider because it's just a nice thing to hold up. It does slow the game down in a good way for the deck that we're trying to play here, which is this deck. It's pretty sweet. All right. And then, of course, Bone Crusher Giant, 3 mana, 4/3, you know, does the stomp. It's one of the most played cards in Standard right now, and there's a reason. It's busted, it's powerful, it's really, really good, and is a good thing for us to be jumping into a little bit heavier into red for. And honestly, we're only putting in a few red cards in the deck. So Valki is, you know, red-black. and we are splashing up in the top end. But other than that, we're really not playing that much red. Like Shadow Skull Smashing for the most part is going to be played as our red source. We will be using it every once in a while for removal, but for the most part, we're wanting that as a red source because we don't have tons and tons of red. We have 3 mountains. We have our pathways that came from KALDHEIM. Fable Passages, go to find these ones, and then everything else is a black land, basically. It creates black mana for us. And so Shadow Skull Smashing basically just extra mountains for us, but occasionally it'll be nice for extra damage dealing stuff. And they turn on our Bone Crusher Giants pretty easily. So Bone Crusher Giant, really easy to splash, really good card, definitely needing it in here. And Aghanim Awakening, of course, just be able to hit a few of our creatures. We don't have tons of creatures in here to hit, but Valkis and Acquisitions Experts are worth it. And then occasionally we can get up to like a Tergrid. But I feel like Aghanim Awakening just enough, like getting up to 5 mana with this is something we're trying to do anyway. And so just having that ability to get out a Valki or an Acquisitions Expert back to the battlefield after we have a Tergrid maybe on the battlefield can just be really, really powerful for us. And then this is the card that got way, way better in this deck, that was in standard, that has not seen much play, but is a very, very powerful removal spell. 3 mana instant, each opponent sacrifices a creature or a planeswalker with the highest cover mana cost among creatures and planeswalkers they control. So this is just a really powerful, very powerful effect. So Soul Shatter definitely getting slotted in here. That's one of the best ways to get other things from Tergrid. We get their best thing off the board as long as Tergrid survives the interaction and everything that goes on there. And it's at instant speed, so we can do this whenever. We can set it up to where we destroy something we don't care for them to kill, or we don't care to have on our side of the board. Let's say like they have like an Elder Gargaroth and a whatever the planeswalker is. Vivian, there we go. I know what I'm talking about. So we kill one of those with Bloodchief's Thirst for 4 mana. We save 3 mana up in Soul Shatter and get to kill that, and that's what sacrifices, which then comes to right side of the board with Tergrid. And so that is basically the deck. Let's jump into the land just a little bit, just because there is one other card that comes from KALDHEIM that is worth mentioning here, which is Immersturm Skull Cairn. Enters the battlefield tapped as a black mana, black source. You can pay 1 black, double red, tap this, and it sacrifices it. You sacrifice it, it deals 3 damage to target player, and that player discards a card. You can activate this only time you cast a sorcery. So really good power. It is basically make him discard. It's Kroxa. It's a Kroxa effect, which, by the way, I just realized that Kroxa probably ought to go into this deck as well. All right, you need to slot in some spots for Kroxa. I totally forgot Kroxa while we were playing this, but Kroxa comes into this deck as well. But that's basically what this deck can do. Oh, dude, we totally need Kroxa in this deck. All right, I'll make the quick shift real quick. So for those people that didn't make it to the end, sorry about it. This is also a cool thing about Aether Hub. I'm just showcasing what you can do. So we'll add in Kroxa to the deck. We'll add 2 copies here. All right, 2 copies of Kroxa. We'll go down 1 Bone Crusher Giant, since we're splashing red anyway right now. We don't want too many of those. And we'll actually go down Acquisitions Expert down to 2, and full copies of full play set of Kroxa, and down to we'll go down 1 Shadow Skull Smashing and go up 1 mountain. There we go. Bam, done. That's it. That's the deck. Okay, 3 Kroxas. I had too many. Okay, there we go. That's the deck. So did I not save it? All right, we saved it. We're good. We're good. All right, there you go, guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Let me know how I can improve these kinds of videos. I'm still getting used to doing them. I probably won't be doing these too often unless we're coming up to next sets, things like that. But I just want to be making the most interesting, the most fun content for you guys. So let me know what that is. If this is something you guys are interested in, make sure you leave the like button. Make sure you subscribe. If it's not, still like, subscribe, but comment down below and let me know what other things you guys are interested in, and so I can be helping that out. All right. See you guys in the next one. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.